Have you ever stopped to ask yourself how much of your stress, your exhaustion, your anxiety actually comes from your need to control everything? And I'm not just talking about controlling your job, your schedule, your bills. I mean control in a deeper sense, inside you. The part of you that constantly needs to be sure, that needs to know what's coming tomorrow, to understand exactly who you are, what you want, where you're headed. The part that's always reaching for answers, clarity, structure. Let's be honest, society trains us to crave that. From a young age, we're taught that success, peace, happiness, they all come from knowing. Knowing the plan, knowing the right move, knowing who we are. As if life is some equation you just need to solve correctly. But what if that's not true? What if this obsession with certainty, the need to always have it figured out, isn't the solution, but the problem? What if that very craving for control is what's quietly eating away at your peace? You might not even realize it, but maybe that constant tension you feel, that pressure behind your eyes when you lie awake at night, isn't coming from your life being chaotic, but from your need for it not to be. From the way you try to bend life into something predictable, safe, knowable. Maybe you're just tired, not from working hard, not from your responsibilities, but from fighting the unknown, from building perfect plans that fall apart with the slightest unexpected change, from trying to live in a world that makes no promises while expecting it to give you guarantees. And that's a painful place to be. It feels like anxiety, doesn't it? Like living in limbo, where every unanswered question feels like a threat, every future possibility feels like danger, and uncertainty becomes the enemy. But what if I told you the problem isn't the uncertainty? What if the real poison, the thing that's making you suffer, is your refusal to accept it? There was this 16th century French philosopher, Michel de Montaigne. He lived in a time of dogmas, of rigid systems, of people desperately trying to create perfect answers for everything. And what did he do? He turned inward. He sat in his tower, surrounded by books, and he started paying attention to something most people avoid. His own thoughts, his contradictions, his fears, his inconsistencies. And instead of hiding them, he wrote about them with brutal honesty, not as someone who had everything figured out, but as someone who realized maybe the point isn't to know everything. Maybe the point is to learn how to live better with what we don't know. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Not how to fix your life, not how to eliminate all your uncertainties, but how to start a different relationship with them, a healthier one. A freer one. Because here's the truth. The moment you stop resisting the unknown, something changes. Something inside you shifts. Your anxiety loosens its grip, the pressure fades, and for the first time in a long time, life feels a little simpler. Not because the world outside you changed, but because you did. It's not an external transformation. It's an internal one, a quiet, powerful shift that starts the moment you decide to stop clinging to control and start walking, not toward the answers, but toward a new way of being in the world.
Because this journey doesn't begin with a formula or a motivational quote. It begins with a sentence you were never taught to say out loud. I don't know. And that's okay. See, Montaigne wasn't a traditional philosopher. He didn't climb up on a stage and deliver grand theories. He didn't try to build some giant system that explained everything. He wrote from within his own experience. He wrote from inside his own mind. And that's what makes his work so powerful even today. He wasn't trying to impress people. He was trying to understand himself. And what he discovered was something most of us spend our whole lives avoiding. that we are confusing, inconsistent, ever-changing beings. That the more you try to trap life in definitions, the more it slips through your fingers. So instead of trying to dominate life with answers, he chose to live in the questions. Instead of pretending to be certain, he asked, "What do I know?" And that wasn't a joke. It wasn't sarcasm. It was a real, sincere question. A way of checking in with himself, of staying grounded. Because for Montaigne, admitting what he didn't know wasn't weakness. It was strength. It was freedom. Can you imagine what that's like? To not have to pretend you've got it all figured out? To stop performing the role of someone who knows? To not be perfect, not be finished, just to be you in all your messy, evolving, uncertain humanness. We live in a world that demands certainty all the time. You're expected to have an opinion about everything, a stance, a label, a plan, a direction. But Montaigne gives us something radically different: the permission to be human first. Not right, not consistent, just real. He believed that your doubts, your contradictions, your confusion, they're not flaws to be fixed. They're signs of life, evidence that you're alive, thinking, growing. And maybe that's what you needed to hear right now. Maybe you're not broken. You're just exhausted from pretending to be unchanging. And here's what Montaigne did that's so rare. He allowed himself to shift, to say one thing today and something else tomorrow, to look at himself, change his mind, and say, yeah, that was true then, but maybe not now. And that's not hypocrisy, that's maturity, that's growth. Because real life isn't a straight line. It's messy, it curves, it breaks, it rebuilds. And instead of fighting that, Montaigne embraced it with curiosity, with gentleness, even with humor. He knew that peace doesn't come from control. It comes from learning how to flow. And that's the secret, isn't it? If you want to live well, if you want real inner peace, you can't spend your life trying to control every detail. That's not strength. That's survival mode. True strength is being able to sit with what you don't know, to live in the questions without panic, to be okay with not having it all figured out. Because here's the truth: the more you try to control life, the more it slips away from you.
Let's be real for a second. Most of us are constantly trying to control things we were never meant to control. Tomorrow, other people's opinions, how we'll feel next week, how our career will unfold, even things like how our body responds to time or emotion. It's like we're holding 100 invisible leashes, yanking hard, hoping that if we pull just right, life will behave. But the truth is, it never really works, does it? You try to hold everything together, but life keeps surprising you. And not always in the good way. It's like trying to catch water with your hands. The tighter you grip, the faster it slips through your fingers. And yet, you keep trying. Because somewhere along the line, you were taught that control equals safety. That if you could just plan enough, think far enough ahead, work hard enough, then things would go the way you wanted. But what's the cost of that mindset? Have you actually noticed what this constant effort to control is doing to you? It's not just tiring, it's toxic. It keeps you on edge. It turns you into a full-time inspector, constantly scanning for what could go wrong. It steals your presence, your joy, your rest. And this whole loop, this constant monitoring and tension, has a name: anxiety. At its core, Anxiety is the fear of uncertainty. It's your mind begging for a guarantee in a world that doesn't offer any. Most people live in a state of low-grade fear, trying to map out every curve in the road ahead, as if enough preparation will prevent them from ever feeling lost or hurt or vulnerable. But Montaigne understood something that modern psychology is only now fully confirming. Trying to predict everything is like living in a state of war with reality. And that's not life, that's mental warfare. Because human suffering doesn't only come from what happens to us. A huge part of it comes from the way we resist what happens, from the refusal to allow life to be what it is. Think about it. How often do you suffer not because something's wrong, but because you wish it were different? A delayed flight, a breakup, a career pivot. These things are painful enough on their own, but what really wrecks us is the resistance, the part of us that says, this shouldn't be happening. Montaigne didn't live that way. When pain came, when loss showed up, when the unknown knocked on his door, he didn't try to kick it out. He welcomed it like a guest he didn't particularly like, but accepted anyway. He didn't try to explain it away or rise above it with some philosophical theory. He just sat with it, observed it, let it be part of him. That's what made him so revolutionary. He didn't treat suffering like a problem to solve. He treated it like a teacher, something to listen to understand. He let life be messy, and in doing so, he found peace. But here's where it gets even more real. Have you noticed how the people who try to control the most are often the ones who are the most tense, the most reactive, the most drained? It's because control doesn't protect you, it traps you.
You can't relax when you believe that the moment you let go, even a little, everything will fall apart. That's not peace, that's imprisonment. Montaigne offered a completely different perspective. He practiced conscious surrender. Now, don't get it twisted. This wasn't passivity. This wasn't giving up. This was a bold, mature acceptance that the world doesn't revolve around you, that your job isn't to dominate life, but to learn how to move with it. That shift in perspective changes everything. Because the more you try to control life, the more frustrated you become when it doesn't follow your script. And the more frustrated you get, the more control you crave. It's a vicious cycle, one that leaves your body tense, your mind scattered, and your soul heavy. But Montaigne breaks that cycle. He offers us a way out, not by handing us a perfect plan, but by inviting us to release the need for one. He shows us that the goal isn't control, it's coexistence with life, with uncertainty, with yourself. So how do you do that? How do you actually start living with the unpredictable instead of constantly fighting it? It starts with a shift, not in your schedule, not in your habits, but in your attitude toward yourself. Montaigne didn't spend his days theorizing about how people should live. He turned his entire existence into an ongoing experiment. He used his own mind, his own heart, as a field of study. He paid attention. He listened. He didn't pretend to be consistent or wise or in control. He just showed up to himself honestly every single day. He noticed the thoughts that made no sense, the fears that crept in for no reason, the opinions he held that contradicted everything he said a week ago. And instead of hiding those things, he wrote them down. He didn't write as a teacher. He wrote as a human being trying to understand himself. And in doing so, he gave us one of the most valuable gifts you can offer another person: permission to be real. And this practice of honest, unfiltered self-observation, it's one of the deepest forms of self-knowledge there is. But let me say this clearly. Self-observation is not self-criticism. It's not about sitting in a room and tearing yourself apart. It's not about beating yourself up over every thought or feeling that doesn't fit your ideal self-image. It's about noticing when you're pretending. Noticing when you're clinging to an old version of yourself that no longer feels true. It's about recognizing the masks, the ones you wear at work, with your family, even in your own head, and gently, compassionately choosing to take them off. Because here's the thing, you are not some perfectly sculpted marble statue. You are not meant to be flawless or fixed. You are fluid. You are changing. You are unfinished. And that's not a problem. It's beautiful. Montaigne knew this. He saw that the things we try hardest to hide, our confusion, our messiness, our inconsistency, are actually what make us most human, most alive. And he had this incredible way of dissolving shame simply by being honest. By writing openly about his own weaknesses, his own doubts, his own irrational impulses. He showed us something we forget all the time. You don't need to be right to be real. You just need to be present. And when you can do that, when you can meet yourself with honesty and compassion instead of performance and perfection, something softens. You stop needing to pretend. You stop needing to control every narrative. You just become. And that's where the real work begins.
Let's go a little deeper now, because even if you start being honest with yourself, even if you stop pretending, there's still something you can't avoid: change. Even when you begin to accept uncertainty, you still have to deal with the constant evolution of life. Your mind, your relationships, your desires, everything is always shifting. And let's be real, most of us are terrified of that. We're taught to believe that life is supposed to stabilize at some point, that one day we'll figure it all out and everything will finally make sense. That if we just land the right job, find the right person, learn the right strategy, we'll reach this magical plateau where everything is settled. But that's a lie. It's a comforting fantasy sold to us by schools, by gurus, by industries that profit off your anxiety. It's the promise of a perfect destination where you no longer change, where everything stays aligned, where doubts disappear, and your sense of self is locked in. But Montaigne saw straight through that. He knew that everything flows: your thoughts, your values, your body, the people you love, the things you want. They all pulse and shift. Nothing is fixed, nothing is guaranteed, nothing is final. And the more you resist that truth, the more you try to live like life should be predictable, the more suffering you create for yourself. It's not the change that hurts you most, it's your refusal to allow it. Montaigne wasn't afraid to evolve. He didn't cling to ideas or identities just because they were familiar. He let himself be changed by life. He even said constancy is a virtue of mechanical minds. That's a bold statement. But what he meant was, if you never change, you're probably not paying attention. Because to live deeply is to be moved by life. Have you ever noticed that your deepest fears almost always revolve around change? Fear of losing someone, fear of losing your job, fear of being seen differently, fear of things falling apart. But what if the fear isn't really about change itself? What if the real fear is about not knowing who you'll be on the other side of that change? That's the real challenge. Trusting that you'll still belong to yourself even after everything shifts. And that's what Montaigne did so beautifully. He let change shape him. He let himself be soft, flexible, curious, and in doing so, he found a kind of lightness that most of us forget is even possible. He didn't resist the current, he learned to float. But let's not get too abstract here. How do we bring this into real life? How do we actually live like that? How do you deal with uncertainty, chaos, and change without losing yourself in the process? That's where Montaigne's real genius comes in. He didn't just reflect, he practiced. He built rituals, habits, ways of thinking that helped him stay sane and grounded in the face of life's messiness. He created a kind of inner framework, not to control life, but to better live with it. So let's break that down. Here are 5 Montaigne-inspired habits you can use to bring more peace and clarity into your life, starting now.
1. Question your certainties. Anytime you feel totally sure about something, pause. Ask yourself, is this actually true, or am I clinging to this belief because I'm afraid of what happens if I let go of it? Montaigne made it a practice to doubt his own opinions, not because he was insecure, but because he was wise. He knew that absolute certainty often hides fear. Real confidence comes not from having all the answers, but from being okay with not having them. 2. Write, not to impress, just to understand. Keep a journal. Write letters you'll never send. Scribble notes to yourself on your phone, whatever works. But write not to be productive, not to get clarity instantly, but to hear yourself more clearly. Montaigne wrote thousands of pages, not because he had some grand vision, but because writing helped him make sense of his own mind. Get your thoughts out of your head. Get them onto paper. That alone can quiet the noise. 3. Embrace impermanence as a way of life. Yes, make plans. Yes, set goals, but hold them lightly. Life will change, and when it does, your ability to adapt is more valuable than your ability to stay the course. Let go of the fantasy that everything has to go according to plan. Real strength is in flexibility, not rigidity. 4. Learn to laugh at yourself. Take your growth seriously, but don't take yourself so seriously. Montaigne was sharp, but he was also playful. He made fun of his own fears, his contradictions, his weird habits. That humility, that lightness, was part of his strength. When you can laugh at yourself, you remove shame. And when shame dissolves, there's room to grow. 5. Create space for silence. Carve out time with no distractions, no phone, no agenda, just you and your thoughts. Silence isn't about isolation, it's about clarity. It's in those quiet moments that you start to notice what's actually going on inside you, what you believe, what you fear, what you want. It's also where your anxiety starts to loosen, where uncertainty stops feeling like a threat and starts feeling like possibility. These aren't tips to make life easier. They're tools to help you live it more honestly, more fully.
Not freedom in the external sense, freedom from traffic, from bills, from work, but internal freedom. The freedom to not have all the answers, the freedom to change your mind, the freedom to be unfinished, the freedom to be soft in a world that tells you to be hard. That kind of freedom doesn't come from certainty. It comes from acceptance, from presence, from being willing to say, I don't know, and that's okay. Montaigne didn't want you to escape the chaos of life. He wanted you to dance with it, to move with it, to stop fighting reality and start flowing with it. Because in the end, the very things you tried so hard to control, the future, people, feelings, outcomes, they were never meant to be controlled in the first place. Life doesn't obey your spreadsheets, your routines, your expectations. People will change, plans will fall through,
Feelings will evolve. And none of that means you failed. It just means you're alive. So here's the real invitation. Let go. Not as a last resort, but as a first act of freedom. Let go of the pressure to know everything. Let go of the shame of not having it all figured out. Let go of the belief that control is your only path to peace. Because peace doesn't come from control. It comes from presence. The simplicity you've been chasing isn't out there in the perfect life, the perfect schedule, the perfect plan. It's right here, in this moment, when you finally give yourself permission to be human, to be messy, to be changing, to be confused, and to still be enough. So let me ask you, what part of you is still resisting the unknown? What happens when you look toward the future and realize you don't have clear answers? Does it scare you, or does it also feel like a kind of freedom? Drop a comment below. Share your experience. Tell me where this message landed for you. Because I read every word, and you never know, your story might be the exact thing someone else needs to hear. And if this journey has spoken to you, don't stop here. There's more to explore, more to let go of, more to grow into. Subscribe, hit the bell, watch the next video, because this isn't just a YouTube channel. It's a conversation, a space, a slow, steady return to what matters most. And you belong here.